Hey guys, it's Kat and I'm back today with the start of another 1 week, 1 palette review. If you're new here, it's essentially the way I like to review palettes where I show it to you unused. I apply it for the first time on camera so you can sort of see my thought process. I've got a squealing kid in the other room, ignore that. Then I like to check in over the period of about a week of use. So could be 5 to 8 or 9 looks, depending on how I want to go with this palette. And I just let you know my experience and what I think about the palette as I sort of use it. And then I'll conclude what I think about the palette after I've used every shade and shown you all the looks. So that's what I like to do. They're fairly long reviews, so if you want to jump around, there are timestamps in the description box. But what I'm doing today is an exciting one. So the palette that I'm going to be trying on for the first time today, and I actually haven't opened this yet, so I'm very excited. Hopefully it didn't break in the mail. It's by Kaleidos or Kaleidos. It's their first collaboration and it just happens to be with Angie. So Angelica Nyqvist, who is a great YouTuber. I've been watching her and following her for years now. So it's a really good pairing because she loves the brand and really sort of her makeup style really works with their aesthetic. So I thought it was really smart of Kaleidos to choose her as their first collaboration. It works organically and the palette does look beautiful. I've seen it in images, I haven't seen it in real life, but I get to. I was sent this pack in PR, so I didn't buy it myself, but it never has any bearing on my conclusion of the palette. The palette speaks for itself, in my opinion. All right, some basic information about this. It was available for pre-order. I believe it sold out really quickly and it is launching again. Is it on the 17th? All right, Future Cat here, jumping in, sneak peek of another look, but I wanted to make it super clear that if you wanted this palette, there's only one last restock that's happening on the 17th of Feb at 11 p.m. PST. So yeah, if you wanted this, it's limited. It's coming back for one more restock. So I will have this review up before that. So hopefully you can see my thoughts on the palette and the looks I've created. But yeah, don't sleep on it if you do want it. Also, just a heads up, the first look I create is appalling. I will endeavor to make much more flattering looks throughout this video. So this is an example of a more flattering one. But yeah, if you don't like the first look, just skip it. There's timestamps in the description box because it was a bit of a mess. Palette is $45, which is, I think, a really good price for the amount of shades you get. It's a 15 pan palette. There's also this box you can get, but you got to sort of buy it separately, which is a bit strange. The box is very pretty. I love the colors of this. And I love that it's sort of like this, I don't know, doorway window kind of design. I think it looks really cool. There's also a deck of cards available, which I think is really cool because I love the design of this collection. I love the design that Kaleidos puts on their palettes in general. I think their colors are really smart. Oh, there's a better way to open this. What am I doing? Yeah, I think their colors are really smart. I love their sort of like sort of modern but sort of like art deco-y design. So I thought it was really cool that they made cards. These again will be restocked on the 17th and I think they're $5. So it's not like breaking the bank. It's a deck of cards, but it does have the cool sort of design in the back and they all have, look at that. That looks so cool. I don't know if you can see. Look at them. They're really cool. They're a fun deck of cards. Look how cool they are. All right, so that's the box there. I love the cobalt blue. I think it's like my favorite color. It's beautiful. So the information is it's the Club Nebula palette. They say it's an ultra pigmented, highly blendable, multi-chromatic palette. It does have 2 multi-chromes, 3 sparkling duochromes, 1 sparkling metallic shade, and 9 highly pigmented mattes. The palette contains 13 grams of product, so that's over 15 shades. So it's just under 1 gram a pan, but I think that's a nice amount of product. The palette is beautiful. It's quite chunky. I'm not gonna lie, it is a bit like a box or like a jewelry box, but it's a nice sturdy cardboard. So it's not plastic, which is really nice to see. The design is beautiful. I'll have to show you a close-up. It's got this beautiful sort of holographic foiled effect on it. I love the design. It's really intricate. I love the colors. Everything about this just, you know, I love the aesthetic of it. On the back as well, there's a little quote from Angelica. So it says, the Club Nebula palette is a collection of my favorite shades for my favorite people. I love this. I think it's really nicely done. I think it looks really classy, and yep, it's perfect inside as well. There is a nice sized mirror if that's what you value. I quite like a mirror in a palette, not everyone does. But what I love about this palette, besides the fact that it's colorful, Angie is a colorful makeup fanatic, so this makes sense that it's quite colorful, but I do love that there are also some sort of more muted colors dotted in so you can complete a look. I often see rainbow palettes that make it very hard to create a whole like cohesive look because they don't have the light, the mid-tones, the deeps, the different textures, and also the muted shades as well as the bright shades. So I like that this has done it all. It also means that it's great for all skin tones. So you've got the light, you've got the medium and the deep. So it's a very, very versatile palette. It's gorgeous. I keep getting distracted with how like fluffy and overgrown and shit my hair is, but whatever, we'll pin it up soon. What I'll do with this palette is definitely try to do a look a row, because I feel like the rows are pretty cohesive. So you have like a greeny blue row, you have more of a purpley cool toned blue sort of there row, and then you have a warmer, more peachy red row. So I want to do a look a row, but I also want to do a few looks where I go quite deep in color, quite muted in color, see how versatile this palette really is. But before I do that, let's get on to swatches. All right, I always do my swatches on bare skin, so no primer. And I just wanted to mention, these were really, really soft to pick up. So the mattes particularly felt very, very finely milled and really easy to pick up. So I feel like they're going to pack a punch with pigment. So I'm doing the first row first, and then I'll do a row and arm. So let's go. This is the first shade. It is a beautiful sort of iridescent green, and it almost has like a purpley blue sort of shift to it as well. Then there's this beautiful matte teal. There we go, it matches my dress today. This sort of acid green, a little bit flaky to swatch, but it does adhere to the skin quite nicely. Often you find some of the lighter shades are quite loosely pressed, but the darks are quite firmly pressed. These are equally as loosely pressed. So there will probably be a bit of fallout sort of stuff going on, but you can see how pigmented these are. They're crazy pigmented. Look at that. So that's the first row there. Very, very pretty, very, very bold. All right, onto the second row. We have this beautiful sort of purple iridescent topper shade. It's got silver, it's got purple, it's probably got more nuances that I can't see right now, but we'll have a play around. There's this beautiful taupe shade. I love that color. That color is gorgeous. It's really versatile. I can see this going with so many different shades. And then this sort of duochrome, multi-chrome shade is gorgeous. It looks very teal on camera. In my view, it looks quite purple. All right, next two shades, we have this beautiful sort of gray toned purple, another beautiful sort of deepening shade without too much color being added, and this beautiful plum. I love plum shades. I think they're a hidden gem. They can really sort of vamp up and make looks really, really interesting. So I'm glad she's put that in there. It's a really beautiful alternative to like a dark brown or a black. Ooh, last row, we have some beautiful duochrome shades. You can't see how gorgeous this is. It's like beige and gold and pink and gorgeousness. Really, really pretty. Let's swatch them. That one is gorgeous. That's going to be one of my favorite shades. It's so pretty, and I can see it really peachy in where I'm sitting at the moment. You can see it more pink. This one, oh wow, that's a vibrant purple. I might have to get the mirror out to see if you can see what I'm seeing. See. And then we've got this peachy matte, which is a really pretty shade as well. It's quite orange. It's quite apricot. This next shade is also gorgeous. It's like an orange with a red and pink and sort of, yeah, it's really beautiful. A lot more interesting than it looks in the pan, which is great to see. It's a nice surprise. And then the last shade is this beautiful dark sort of burgundy blood red, which is beautiful. This row is probably, in my opinion, the most interesting because it does have some really beautiful sort of multi-chrome and really interesting shades. So I'm not too sure if you can see the different colors in the mirror, but the first shade does have like a beigey sort of goldiness to it. The second shade has like a vibrant purple that's not really showing up well on camera. And the third shade has this beautiful sort of like red flash to it. They're really, really gorgeous. They're really pretty. Oh, there we go. Can we see it a bit better? I'm not too sure. They're really gorgeous. All right, so one thing I do like to show after I've swatched is how the pans sort of look after one swatch. You can see that Naru did sort of flake off everywhere. You can see that Void has a lot of kick up in the pan. So these are softer pressed eyeshadows, so just be careful with that. They will, I can see that once you put a brush in, it's going to pick up quite a lot, so just be careful of that. I also want to point out that there's some really cool names if you're into sci-fi. So Firefly, like the TV show, there's a lot of sort of space and sci-fi names here, which are really cool. I know Angie's a big fan of video games and sci-fi. I'm a moderate fan, so I don't get all the references, but I do get a lot of them. And I think it's a really nice little twist. All right, I'm going to actually go quite colourful and fun and a bit crazy today because I'm going to go to the pool in about an hour. So I'm going to take this off anyway. So I thought I might do some more sort of incorporate these shades as wearable looks throughout the week. But right now I'm just going to go a bit crazy. I have put a base on my eyes. I've got to point out again, I have some sort of dermatitis here. So that's what that sort of texture is. But I put MAC Painterly Paint Pot on my eyes, and I did that a little while ago, so it's a tiny bit tacky, but it's not super tacky. I'm not going to set this with a cream shade because there's no cream shade in this, and because I want to go a little bit crazy, I'm going to go in with, oh, my brush has just gone into the neon green, so wish me luck. We're using the shade Gravity. All right, so this does blend pretty well over a non-set primer. It doesn't just grip to certain areas and stick there. It does have quite a nice amount of pigment, but you can sort of maneuver it around. This stray brow hair, you're killing me. Go away. Again, these are very soft to pick up, so you can pick up quite a lot on your brush. So just be really careful. I started like putting it lightly, and now we're just sort of building it up a little bit to get some intense lime green crease. All right, let's do it. I'm going in with the shade Firefly. This is actually a Kaleidos brush. It's the S3, I think it is. Yes, S3 brush. Let's put this on. Oh, whoa. That is gorgeous. It's beautifully pigmented and it has a lot of color for one of those iridescent sort of topper shades. You can see that it doesn't need a base to actually look good. It looks great on its own. You can also see that just sort of layered over that lime green, it gives a beautiful effect. All right, I've just wiped off that brush and I've gone in with the shade Nebula because I normally wouldn't go green and peach, but because, again, I'm just going to wash this off soon, I'm going to try it. I think this actually blends really beautifully. I love this color combo. So this is that sort of more vibrant peachy shade that's got a bit of a flash of pink and a little bit of like red. It's really pretty, but for some reason, it actually pairs really nicely. It almost has that sort of pastel but iridescent, beautiful pastel vibe. I'm sort of just picking shades that are talking to me as I put the brush down. I'm like, what do I want to do? And I'm like, this shade I want to put all over my face. I do want to say I thought this shade was going to be a little bit more intense on the eye. It might be one that I'll play with later with a bit of a glitter glue and see if I can get that vibrant sort of orange shade, because just with this brush, which is a sort of flat packing blendy sort of brush, multi-use brush I call it, it isn't packing on very boldly. It looks, again, more of an iridescent sort of shade. All right, and because there are no rules, I'm going to go in with a little bit of that red giant shade and just put it on the outer corner almost as a liner and just sort of flick it out. You can see there's a bit of fallout happening. Could have tapped off the brush, but I wanted this to be quite pigmented. Fallout be gone. Oh no, doesn't just flick off. It is quite pigmented, so it grips. So just be careful with fallout. All right, now for the lower lash line, and say it with me, guys. Teal. We're going with teal. I've got the same brush. I've just wiped it off, and I'm putting some teal matte because I want to. Again, I did tap this off, and there's a little bit of fallout. So this palette is very pigmented, very soft. It would benefit from doing your base last, but I can't be bothered, so I'll just deal with fallout. All right, that teal is quite nice. It behaved quite well. I didn't really need to build it up. Again, tiny bit of fallout, but not that big of a deal. This look is looking atrocious. Got a little bit of shade Nova, which I'm just gonna put in the inner corner just to brighten it a little bit. This is really pretty. You can see it just adds that different, it's not actually brightening it too much because it has a heavy purple blue sort of shift to it, or at least makes a blue shimmer over the teal, but it does give a little bit more dimension just in the inner corner. And this is where I think this palette hopefully will be good. I'm just getting some of that grey Nauru shade. And I feel like this palette has the ability to complete look. So instead of just throwing colour all over your look, this has some shades that sort of tones them down and can make them a little bit more flattering. All right, a little bit of navy just to deepen the outer corner on the lower lash line. I did tap this off, but again, there is quite a bit of fallout, so just be careful. They're very soft, very pigmented eyeshadows. All right, a bit of the plum purple just in the outer corner. It's gonna take over the red, but I'll put it back in. All right, did I make this more wearable? Probably not, but at least you can see that the different colors, they sort of pair really beautifully. You can see that with the plum, it brings out different tones in that peach. If you sort of pair them, you know, you can see how they mix really beautifully. Now I am going to go in with, what is this? Maybelline Tattoo Liner in a blue shade. This is Striking Navy, and I'm just going to put this on my lower lash line because I feel like I need to start, I don't know, bringing it all together. It's actually such a beautiful formula of an eyeliner. I have like 5 of these shades because they work so nicely on the waterline. Maybelline mascara. With a bit of liner for my waterline and some mascara, I think this looks a lot better. I think the thing that keeps distracting me is how high this green is. So I am just going to reach into my Lorac Pro 1 and just get a bit of a beigey sort of shade just to sort of bring that down a little bit. So again, you can sort of pair this palette with any sort of nude palette you want. This brush, Kylie, Jesus Christ, the fibers are going everywhere. But you can see that you can just sort of bring that down a little bit with a color that's similar to your skin tone. All right, let's call that done for look number 1. There's a lot going on, so we don't want to add any more. But I'll zoom out and just let you know what I think about this on first impressions, and then I'll jump to look number 2. All right, so you can see there's a lot going on. I'm not just talking about my ridiculous hair. We've got a lot of colors going on, and I did try to draw from pretty much all different rows. I'm not sure if you can see, and I might bring this in a second. There is a lot of kick up in the pan, and I had to tap off my brush a lot. So there's a lot of kick up and a lot of excess product. So this is probably a bit more of a fragile palette because it is so soft, and it is a little bit messy, but that's fine. So even though this look is not something that I'd be like, yeah, replicate this at home, it looks great, it's not the best. This is a fun palette to experiment with, and that's what I think is the smartest thing about this, is that I look at it and I go, oh, I want to play with that sort of iridescent shade, or I want to see how that nebula shade goes over a glitter glue really intense. There's parts of this where I really want to delve into and play with, which is what I'm going to do over the next week. And I'll be back tomorrow with another look. All right, checking back with look number 2, and I really like this look. I think it's really pretty. Let me have a look in the mirror. I did this a few hours ago. Yes, it's very pretty. My eyebrows are unruly as per usual. So what I used today, I did use glitter glue because I wanted to use this shade here to its like fullest potential, and it is glorious on glitter glue. It works perfectly. It's like a match made in heaven. I use the Too Faced glitter glue. The e.l.f. one works really great as well. But this is, yeah, it's a gorgeous shade. It gives sort of like an iridescent, almost like neon coral sheen to it. So there's a bit of a base color, but sort of like neon orangey, pinky red sheen. It's really, really beautiful. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous in person. This would be gorgeous over the top of some of the darker shades. I really, really like it. So that's the main color. I didn't want to go full bottom row because I haven't got there yet where I want to do the looks with individual rows. So I wanted to mix it a little bit with the purples. So what I did was I took the plum in the outer corner and sort of blended it into the crease. So the top row is that shimmer, that plum matte. The bottom row, I wanted to do the reverse. So I took the matte sort of peach color on the outer corner and all along. And then I used this iridescent white that looks purple on the inner corner. So that's what I've done today. I just used a bit of brown liner. My lashes are popping off, but it is what it is. And I really love the combination of the peaches and the purples together. I think they work really beautifully together and they really complement. So I do see that this bottom row would work really organically with that middle row. One thing that I did want to note really quickly, while I was using this, I did notice that sometimes the shimmers can take over the mattes. I've experienced this a bit before with some of Kaleidos past palettes. So I find their shimmers are so intense that if you then try to layer a matte over the top, it doesn't completely cover it, or it doesn't lay really well over the top of shimmers. The shimmers sort of peek through. So it's not a big deal. It just means that if you want to layer, it's better to put the mattes down first and then the shimmers over the top, which is probably the more traditional way of doing it. But what I love to do is put, you know, shimmer all over the lid and then sort of pack matte in the outer corners or whatever. And I feel like that packing on, it doesn't really work as well with some of these shimmers. So that's just a thing that I've noticed about the Kaleidos shimmers in particular. I don't think I've experienced that with other brands, but the shimmers are really intense and that's sort of like a side effect of it in my opinion. But I'll zoom in so you can see this look close up and then we'll get to look number 3. All right, I'm not sure if this artificial lighting is doing the colors justice because you can see that the colors work organically together and they're really pretty. The effect is really pretty, but you can't see the vibrancy that I see in real life. This sort of just looks like a peachy sort of pink, but in real life it is really vibrant and really nuanced and really, really pretty. And just a side note, I'm really digging the effect of like peach, peach, purple, purple. I sort of like that alternating color story. I think it looks really cool. It's an effect that I don't think I've done before. All right, look number 3. And this one, I tried to go as nude as possible with this palette. Today's gonna be a hot day and I'm just seeing my family for a picnic. So I didn't want to wear anything that's like too full on. I'm not saying that you can't wear bright colors to picnics, but it's not really sort of my vibe. And when it's hot, I sort of want something a little bit more I don't know, pared down, because if things start to melt off my face, I don't want like colors smearing everywhere, essentially. So I tried to do as nude as possible and I still think this is quite colorful. So even though this palette does have sort of more muted tones to it, I think they work better to complement the colors than actually create nude looks on their own. So what I did today was I just put my MAC paint pot on. I put this sort of grayish shade all over the lid and up into the crease. And then I thought I'd pick this shade here because I figured that was probably one of the most nude shimmers. And I put that on top just with like a sort of fluffier brush. So I didn't pack it on really heavily. I sort of just dusted it on. I put it on the lower lash line as well. And then what I did was I took this dark purple shade and put it on as a liner. So the liner I have on today is just this. I didn't wet the brush or do anything fancy. I literally just applied that as an eyeshadow and you can see it's quite pigmented. It gripped the eye quite nicely. And then I thought, bugger it, it's quite colorful. The look is quite purple. So I'm not going to escape the color today. So I thought just for a bit of fun, I took a little bit of the lime and ran it underneath the wing. So there's a little bit of lime pop. All right, so hopefully you can see there, that dark purple shade is a gorgeous liner. I would wear this color with pretty much any look. And you can see that this shade, this shimmery shade, does apply quite purple over the gray. So one thing that I think is interesting, look, it's a good thing about these shades, because these shades do have like multi-dimensional shifts to them. Depending on what you apply them over, they will look different. So it looks quite pinky peach in the pan. So straight on it looks pink, but if you do look at it on the side. Hopefully you can see it right in the corner there, the top corner. It looks like quite orangey peach, but when you do layer it over the grey color, it does come out more purple, which was an interesting surprise. All right, I'm back with another look, and you can probably tell that I'm focusing mainly on the top row today. So I wanted to use everything on the top row, but I sort of felt like it was a little bit light on the shimmers. I do like a shimmer generally all over the lid. I don't like just, especially these shades apply quite dark, that I just didn't want dark matte all over the lid. So I ended up dipping into this shade here and putting that all over the lid. What I did was I put this shade all over the lid. I put it just over a MAC paint pot, so not a really sticky base. I didn't set the base, but it's not like a glitter glue, so you can see it's quite bold. I then blended this shade here into the crease, which matched perfectly. These two shades, like, beautiful because they have a very similar tone. I thought this was going to be a lot more nuanced. I thought it was almost going to be like a duochrome with maybe like a purpley base with a blue sort of shimmer to it, but realistically it's just a shimmery blue. There's nothing really nuanced to it. It is just your basic shimmery mid-tone blue, but it does pair beautifully with this. They work amazingly together. It looks like one fades into the other just perfectly. I put that dark blue on the outer corner, and then what I thought I'd do is use the greens on the lower lash line because I didn't want to neglect those. If I had more time with this review, what I would have liked to have done is the blues on the top lash line followed by some browns or even this sort of greige on the lower lash line, so it's just a blue look, sort of neutralized a little bit with the gray. And then I would have loved to have paired these greens with more of a bronze shade because I feel like they would complement really well, or like a gold shade. So because I'm limited with days to do this, I just had to sort of put them together. Then I also use this iridescent greeny shimmer shade just in the inner corner for a bit of brightness and to sort of mix them together. I put some lashes on and ran some green liner on my waterline. So that's all I've done. They did all apply really nicely. I had no issues. The shimmers were nice and intense. The mattes blended really nicely. The only issue I'm sort of finding, and I think I experienced this with my first look that I would consider a mishmash sort of failed look, but it was experimental, so whatever, was that this green, because it is so yellow toned, when you do sort of blend it out and you sort of blow it out a bit on the lower lash line, which is what I like to do on my lower lash line and even in the crease, I found that because the yellow tones tend to sort of dominate on me and it looks a little bit sickly. So sometimes I catch myself and I'm like, oh, it looks a little bit like I'm getting jaundice, or I've got a bruise that's starting to heal. So I think this toner green, even though it is fun and pretty, blown out on the sort of edges of a look, to me, it's not very flattering. So yeah, it's fun, but it's not a shade that I would reach for too often. So again, that's a look. You can see that shimmery blue, it's very pretty. It's nice and even. There was no sort of building up or packing on. It just applied really beautifully. But again, there's not any sort of complex shimmer or color story to it. It's just a standard shimmery blue. I was sort of expecting a bit more because most of these shimmers in this palette sort of have like a duochrome or a multichrome or something a little bit more unique. And in the pan, this did look like it had a different color base, but I don't see any nuances in a color shift on the eye. It just looks shimmery blue. All right, I'm back with another look, and I really wanted to try that sort of second purple row, but I haven't completed today's look. I just sort of wanted to put down a base and then sort of demonstrate some of the shades on camera again. I still have it playing in my head that first demo was really crap. So, but I thought this was a good way to show you sort of how the colors build and also some of the effects that you can get just with the mattes. So I used this in the crease and that all over the lid. So it is a dark sort of smoky matte eye that I have going on. I also thought doing it this way shows how pretty these sort of muted purple tones are. So they're fairly unique shades. I don't see them too often, but they are really flattering. All right, so I thought I'd start with the shimmery shade, and I want to put it on just my hand so you can see what the color looks like. Purpley blue silvery sort of look to it, and I'm curious to see what it looks like on a darker base as well. All right, moment of truth. So it still has that sort of purpley blue effect to it, so it doesn't really transform too much over these colors anyway. I'm just going to put on the middle just for a bit of brightness. This is a way that I like to brighten a look. Just turn down the brightness so you can see it a bit better, but yeah, so you can sort of pack it on for a sort of frosty effect, or you could always pick it up with a fluffier brush or pick up less just for a bit of a twinkle on the lid. All right, so this is looking quite smoky and gray toned purple. So I'm just gonna add a bit of that plum in the outer corner just to sort of see how that transforms the look a little bit. I love these shades. I think they're beautiful. Gray purples are really beautiful for like smoky looks, but these sort of plum purples work well with warmer and cooler looks, which I really like. So you could mix this with a really warm toned color and it still gives a beautiful depth. Complements brown eyes really, really well. And I'm not too sure if you could see how that does add just a little bit more vibrance to the look, a little bit more purple. I think it's very pretty. So for me, that's more of a completed look compared to just the mattes. I think it gives a lot more dimension, a lot more sort of interest, but you can sort of see how the purples look just on the eye, and then how adding a topper and a little bit more color sort of shapes the look. So that's the purple we're done. All right, I'm back with the last look that I'm gonna do using like exclusively this palette, and from now on, I wanna do a couple of looks incorporating some other shades and just using these as sort of like pops of color or little like special additions to a sort of basic nude look. So I wanted to focus on the bottom row. I just used a normal paint pot. I did set the crease with a cream shade, not from this palette, because I was a bit concerned going into these kind of shades that it was going to cling to certain areas and look quite patchy. So I did set my crease. I initially went with this peach shade just in the crease on the lower lash line a little bit. Use this shade on the inner half, so lower lash line and top lid. And it is a it translates on me anyway to be very, very pink. So it does look like a pink iridescent here. It does look like it's got a sort of almost like a peachy shift. So you can see in the mirror, it looks a little bit more peach, but then it looks like straight up sort of almost like a cool tone pink, but on me, it looks like just iridescent pink shimmer, so which is fine. And then what I decided to do was go in with the red. I wanted to use a bit of it because I really wanted to see how it worked. And what I did was I patted it on the outer half of the lid and on the lower lash line, blended it out a little bit, and then added a little bit more peach into the crease just to help it blend out, and also to take away some of the pinky element to it, because it is definitely a heavy pink look. If you know me, I'm not a big fan of pink. That red shade is more of a berry that translates into a dark, dark pink in my opinion, or at least on my skin tone. It is a beautiful color, and I think if you pair it with more like the peaches or even like orangey tones or goldy tones, I think you will see more of the red come through. But as I've paired it and sort of using it almost on its own in the outer corner, it does blow out to be like a dark sort of pinky berry. All right, so what I decided to do was I wanted to use this shade here, that iridescent white to purple. I wanted to dot that right sort of on the center, but also a little bit on the red, because I feel like that purple shade is going to look really gorgeous on top of the red, but I thought I'd do that on camera so we can see it together. So let's zoom in. Before I put on the purple, this is just a look close up as well, so you can see it's very, very sort of smoky, pinky red with that pink iridescent shimmer in there. I did use a Victoria Beckham eyeliner in a burgundy shade. I used it on my waterline and to tightline slightly. Really, really gorgeous eyeliner. All right, I just wanted to see how this sort of layers on top and how it sort of transforms the look, because that's what I think is really cool about these sort of iridescent shades, is they can really transform a look. So you hopefully can see that iridescence is really beautiful over the red. It pairs really nicely. sort of it makes sense being on the same row because they do complement, but that would also look really nice over the blues and the greens and the purples. All right, so that's a look zoomed out, so you can see instead of it looking just really pink on me, which is fine and it's a nice sort of vibe if you're into those tones, this gives a little bit more of a different effect. So really easy way to just change up the look. All right, we're back with another look, and I decided today to play with some of the greeny tones, but also mix it with some nudes. So I went with one of the palettes that I'm panning, and I decided to set my base with this shade here, put that shade in the crease, and that all over the lid and lower lash line. So I started with a really basic brown base, and then I decided to build a little bit of color on top of it. Now I decided to go with a teal because I do know that dark teals work really nice with browns and bronzes. So what I wanted to do was sort of stagger the teal a little bit. I used this shade here just on the outer corner. I patted it on quite firmly. It did look really bold on top of the shimmer, which was really nice. And then I took this shade here and just put it in the outer corner and sort of flicked it out to create that sort of cat eye liner look without using liner. I did a similar thing on the lower lash line. Oh, and I also used this light green shimmer just on the inner corner to brighten it a little bit. So I only used 3 shades, but you can see how pairing it with a brown gives you a bit of color, but it's not color all over the lid, if that makes sense. It's just color in little accented areas, which is sort of how I like to personally wear color. I love using a bit of teal. I love using a bit of purple. I love using, you know, a bit of peach, but I don't want it all over the lid as the whole look. So this is definitely more of a typical way that I would reach for this palette and use this palette, and I think it's a really pretty look. All right, so close up, hopefully you can see a bit more of the transition between that light teal color and the deeper greeny teal. I have to say that I went back quite a few times to build up that light shade. I just found that I lost it a little bit. So as soon as I sort of started blending out the darker green, I found that this shade would sort of just disappear. And I have just like noticed that quite a bit with Kaleidos eyeshadows. When you try to pack them on and really build up the color intensity of some shades, I found that it doesn't stick very well. It sort of blends away or disappears. And I found that that teal sort of light color was an example of that. So I did try, but it's not looking the neatest, but the sort of color gradient that I wanted was there, and it pairs really beautifully with this bronze color. All right, I'm back with another look. This might be my last one. If I can sneak another one in, I'll try, but I do want to conclude this video after I show you my eye look. So today I decided to, again, sort of mix the palette with nudes because that's how I feel like this works best with my makeup style. So today I sort of unknowingly did a similar style to my last look, but I used sort of purples and it looks a little bit more smoky rather than that sort of teal winged out sort of effect. So what I essentially did was use the brown all over the lid, used this plum shade because I wanted to demonstrate how these sort of plum shades can really beautifully deepen and smoke up a nude look or a brown look and it adds a little bit of color and some depth, but it doesn't make it look too bright purple if you don't like that look. So I love these plum shades. And then on the inner corner, I just popped some of that iridescent white shifty purple shade just to add a little bit of color in there as well. I really love this look, and this is exactly how I love to wear color on a daily basis. I find a lot of color on my eyes. I find it a bit distracting, whereas I feel like the brown with a bit of purple and a bit of purple is exactly how I love to wear this palette. I love this look. I think it turned out beautifully, had no issues. Yeah, love it. Will totally reach for this palette for more looks like this. All right, so if I can squeeze in another look, I really sort of want to use golds and maybe some of the greens mixed together, or maybe some peaches. So if I can squeeze in another look, I'll do it here. If not, it is what it is. All right, I'm back with the 9th look. I decided to squeeze one in. I took off my makeup and it's late at night and I thought, well, let's put some more on my face. So I can demonstrate this palette with another sort of nudish base. I really wanted to do the combination of a gold. Again, I'm just doing your basic Lorac Pro. I'm using that gold all over the lid, on the lower lash line. It's the only additional shade I'm using. And then what I wanted to do was sort of show how the peach will pair with the gold. So I just put the matte peach shade in the crease. I also wanted to show how in sort of everyday wear I would probably use these greens. So I actually mixed them together and put them on the lower lash line. Again, I started with the gold, so there's a bit of gold here, and then it sort of mixes into the mattes. All I did with these shades was just tap my brush into one and then the other and sort of just mix them and then run them under my lower lash line to make more of a murkier green. I really love this murky green. I think it's a really beautiful shade, and I think it would pair really beautifully with a brown on the top lash line. So again, if I had more time, I'd probably do this as its own look with a green and some brown, and then I would have delved a little bit more into, you know, maybe the peachy shades with different sort of nude shades. But I don't have time. I'm going to finish editing this after I've checked in. But yeah, I really feel like for me anyway, and my the way I like to wear my makeup, this is an accompanying palette to a really boring basic palette. I think this is a great way to add a little bit of interest to something really bland. At the same time, I feel like something bland like golds or browns or champagnes act as a really beautiful base for this palette. I feel like on its own, it's a bit bright for me. It's a bit, I've been watching the most recent episodes of RuPaul Drag Race US and UK. So when I do wear this palette by itself, I sort of feel like I'm channeling drag. So it's a little bit much for me. But you can see how you can work it into sort of other basic looks, and I feel like they complement each other really nicely. All right, forgive me if things are looking a little bit rough. I did this makeup partly in the dark almost at about 11 p.m. at night, so I'm looking rough, it's looking a bit rough, but you can just sort of see how gold really sort of anchors or helps neutralize a lot of these colors and makes them a little bit more wearable. So if you are the type of person like me that doesn't mind delving into a bit of color, but you don't want it to be the dominant sort of look, you can see that a lot of these shades do pair really nicely with your basic browns or golds or whatever. All right, time to conclude what I think about the Club Nebula palette. Overall, as a palette in itself, I think it is a really, really smart palette. I think Angie did a fantastic job at curating this palette. Not only does it look really gorgeous and like something that you just want to grab, the color story is very, very, very smart. And I think that is definitely the strength in this palette. Now I want to compare it to palettes like I've got the Violet Voss Bright Vibes palette. So it looks like this. You can see it there. It is your traditional sort of colorful palette, rainbow palette. They're all mattes. They're all the same sort of intensity, vibrancy. You know, you get a nice variety of colors here, but it's all sort of one note when it comes to the depth of color, the brightness, and also the texture. Same as this Sugar Pill Fun Size palette. This has the same sort of concept, a little bit more muted than that last one. Whereas if you compare those to this palette, you'll see that there are light shades, there are mid-tone shades, some are more muted, some are brighter. So you get the bright, you get the muted, you get the sort of mid-tone shimmers here as well, and then you get the dark, colorful mattes. So what I love about this palette the absolute most is that you can reach for this palette and create a variety of full colored looks without needing to reach for another palette. So you can't do that so much with this palette unless you want it to be a matte rainbow eye look or a matte one color look or whatever it happens to be. I feel like most eye looks need all of these elements. It needs something to highlight. It needs something to, you know, the mid-tone. It needs the depth to complete the look. I feel like a really good, comprehensive, sort of flattering eye look needs all these elements. And you don't often get them in colorful palettes. Even from Kaleidos. See, their last palette, which is the same format. So this is the Escape Pod. You can see, again, there are variations in color and there's variations in texture. So mattes, brights, shimmers, and then you've got some nudes, but you don't have much of the light, mid-tone, deep. It just sort of isn't as complete as this palette here. I feel like this is a much more user-friendly, complete palette than this. So I have to really commend Angie for creating what is a comprehensive palette. Like I said, there's not many of them on the market, and that's why I often turn away from colored palettes, because I go, okay, they might be nice to have for that pop of color, but it's really, really hard to complete a full look or multiple full looks using the one palette. You always need to reach for sort of deeper mattes or highlight shades or whatever it happens to be just to complete the colorful look, whereas you don't have to do that with this palette. It is very, very, very well thought out, and you can tell it is created by someone who wears color on a daily basis. So, you know, it is beautiful. I also love the fact that you can get a variety of color stories in there. It's not just like nudes with a pop of blue or whatever it happens to be. You have blues, you have greens, you have purples, you have sort of more muted mauvey purples, you have peachy shades, light pinks, sort of more vibrant multi-chrome corals. You have a red shade that, depending on what you pair it with, can have different tones. So if you pair it with the purples, it will take on a new sort of vibe. If you pair it with the peach, you'll take on a different vibe. So, you know, there are different color stories you can get from it. And I think Angie really showed how you can get like 4 distinct complete looks using this palette when she demonstrated them on Instagram. So I'll put those photos on the screen and you can see that she used this palette for all of those, and I doubt she had to reach for anything else, because this is all you need for those full colorful looks, which is fantastic. I also love that there are a multitude of textures here, because again, often colored palettes, they're either all mattes or shimmer and matte. There's not much variety in the finishes. This, you mainly have mattes, but you also have these sort of pigmented shimmers that do sort of shift a different color, and then you have the topper shades. And look, I'm not a huge topper fan. I know Angie loves them, so this is very, very true to her. You know, you've got the 4 topper shades and they will look differently depending on what you layer them on top of. So you can put them on by themselves and they've got that sort of like almost transparent shimmer sort of thing going on. Or if you lay them over the dark green, you know, they'll have a different effect to layering them over the dark purple or red. So you have a lot of different combinations you can play with to get different effects, which is very, very smart. And I love that about this palette as well. Now, when it comes to the quality of this palette, I think it's good. I don't think it's like amazing, but that's how I feel about Kaleidos palettes in general. They are very, very pigmented eyeshadows. I didn't notice any of these staining, which was great, which often you can get with these sort of tones with pressed pigment palettes. This one, I didn't notice any staining on me personally, but they are very, very pigmented, and you've got to just be careful with the fallout, which is not that big a deal if you are aware of it. I also find that with sort of this blue shade, and it's probably going to be the same with the green, maybe even the peach, because I've noticed this from Kaleidos formula before. If you try to pat it on and sort of build it up, often it doesn't then stick on top of itself and it can sort of just dust away. So they do reach a point where you can't build them up any more opaque, otherwise they start to sort of not grip to the eye, if that makes sense. It's not a big deal, but it's just something that I've noticed from some Kaleidos palettes in the past. They're fairly easy to work with. I didn't need to reach for glitter glue too often. I only did it with this shade to get the full intensity of it, but they lay nicely over a normal primer. So overall, I am very happy with the quality. I think they work really nicely, and if you are a colorful eyeshadow lover, you won't be disappointed in the pigmentation and the effect of this palette. So I think this palette does stand out from the rest of the Kaleidos collection. It complements it, but also stands out as its own thing, mainly because of the depth of color here. You don't often see that in, they'll have like one dark shade, and it's usually a brown, like usually a brown, but you don't often see as many dark shades as you have here. And it's a really smart move because it does open it up to a variety of skin tones. And I just feel like these shades are really, really flattering to complete the makeup look, but also to incorporate with other nudes, just to add a little bit of smoky color. It's really, really beautiful. I did want to point out though, that even though it does stand out as being quite unique, there are shades that are quite similar to other palettes in the permanent Kaleidos range. So if you do have a lot of Kaleidos eyeshadows, you might find some similarities, and I might go through a couple of them now. So for example, from this palette here, which is the Futurism 5, the Electro Turquoise, you can see there's that light sort of aqua color and also that dark greeny turquoise, which I'll swatch next to these guys up the top. So this is from the Futurism. So we've got that light shade and that deeper teal. And then from the Club Nebula, we have slightly more blue, slightly a bit deeper in color, which I actually do prefer that, but it's still very similar. And again, slightly deeper. So, you know, you can argue that you can use them all, but I would also argue that on the eye, they look quite similar. I'll just do a quick swatch comparison with this green from the Futurism 4 VR Neon. All right, so they do look quite similar. They both are quite flaky. I think it's just the sort of neon formula or that really vibrant light formula. It is a bit flakier. So this one is from the VR Neon and this one is from the Club Nebula. This one is a little bit more flaky. I would say that they're so close that they don't both need to be in two separate palettes, but there you go. In the Futurism 3 Astro Pink, there are some shades that are sort of similar to this palette. So we've got this shade here, which is sort of like that one there. This light shimmery silver shade, which is sort of like maybe a more pigmented version of that. So more like metallic rather than topper. And then this one down here, not the same, but sort of similar vibe to that matte taupe. Also in the Futurism 6 Lunar Lavender, we also have an iridescent sort of light purple topper and also that taupey shade, so I'll swatch those as well. So first up, the dupe for Astro. So this is the Futurism, the sort of pink palette, and this is the Club Nebula. So they're quite similar. One has more of a dark base with more of a purple shift, which is the one from the Futurism palette. The Club Nebula looks a little bit more straight up blue, but they're very similar. We've got the three shades that's like that light lavender topper color. So this is from Lunar Lavender, which is a beautiful sort of iridescent multi-dimensional topper. From Astro Pink, this is more of a metallic lavender, so it is quite different. And then I've got the one from Club Nebula, which I'll swatch up here because I think it's more like this one. You can see it is a lot more cool toned. So probably a similar effect. This is a bit warmer and I think there's more shift to it. That's more sort of silvery. So, okay. They're not dupes, but there's similar sort of color stories. You can see there are differences with the taupe. So this is the Club Nebula one. It's a lot more cool toned. This one's from the Lunar Lavender. That's from the Astro Pink. So they are a lot warmer. So I do like that this one's more cool. It's a little bit more unique. So that is lavender, that is pink, and that is nebula. So you can see that there is a difference. I actually think this is the most beautiful one and most unique one. Last one I'll compare is this one from the Futurism 7 Sashimi City. That's like a duochrome. Again, it's got that sort of pink to gold shift, and it does look quite similar to Celestial down here. And they look quite similar on the finger. So this is Sashimi City. Looks quite gold in my lighting. So it's very, very pretty. This one, maybe a little bit more pink and a little bit lighter, but they would give a very similar effect on the eye. This one has more of a sort of gold shift to it and it's a little bit warmer. This is a little bit cooler and lighter, but if you sort of blend them out, I'm sure they're very, very similar. Yeah, very, very similar. So yeah, I didn't do that to poo-poo this palette. I just wanted to point out that there are some very similar shades in some of their other palettes. So if you do have a lot of their palettes, you might find that at least a good third of these you'll have similar colors to and very similar formulas to. But I do love this palette. I think it's beautiful. One quick negative, I do think this palette is quite bulky, like unnecessarily bulky, and because the palette doesn't go all the way out, like it stops there. I feel like the mirror is a little bit, not useless, that's the wrong term, because you can use it, but when I do use palette mirrors, which I am one of those people that use palette mirrors, I like to hold it almost like flat so I can see the pan and see my eye and sort of work, you know, apply the eyeshadow as you do. Whereas as it is, I'd sort of have to go like this and then turn it, which I don't think is very functional. So I didn't feel like it needs a mirror in the lid with the hinge that it's got. And I also would have liked to have seen it to be maybe more sleek, so it's not as bulky. I know it does sort of match their last big palette, and I much prefer this design. I think it looks really beautiful and classy, but you know, I think the packaging could have been a bit more improved in the sleekness. So yeah, overall, think it's a great palette. Formula's solid, colors are solid. You can create some amazing looks with it. And I love the multi-dimensional effect of it. I love that you can complete full looks with it, which is very unusual for colorful palettes. So Angie did a fantastic job. Kaleidos did a fantastic job working with her. It was like a match made in heaven. They both did such a fantastic job with this. When it comes to how I would use this palette, I think my review is slightly different. I do like all the looks I created, except for the first one. That was a hot mess. But I'm not the type of person to wear full colorful looks on a daily basis. I just don't think it really suits me. If I'm going to put it like full color somewhere, it's going to be on the lips. And I love wearing color the way I'm wearing it today. Just like a pop of color just to enhance a boring palette. Like I've been using a lot of the Lorac palettes as my Pan That palettes, and they are boring. So, you know, to take a really boring palette like that and to add some color, they are a match made in heaven. It's very, very beautiful. So for my perspective, I would have loved to have seen maybe a couple more shimmers, and I would have liked these two shades to be taken out. And the reason for that is, firstly, I think they have the closest dupes in other palettes, so I don't feel like it's needed in the Kaleidos range, but also the way I like to reach for this palette as sort of an accent, I don't think I'd use these shades too often as an accent. So I would have loved them to maybe remove those and either replace them with more colorful shimmers. And what I mean by that is like these shades down here or this shade here. So shimmers that have an opaque sort of color to them rather than just the toppers that are quite sheer but add like an iridescence to the look. I do like them. I don't feel like I needed 4 of them in the palette though, because there's sort of like 2 purples, a green, a sort of pinky shade. These can sort of look similar in certain lights. Those can sort of look similar in certain lights. So I think you could have removed 1 or 2 of those, and I would have loved to have seen, yeah, more sort of mid-toned opaque shimmers. I think this was gorgeous all over the lid. I would have loved this green to be replaced with sort of like a duochrome, shimmery, beautiful green that you can pair beautifully with that. I just think that would have worked a little bit better in my makeup style, and maybe replace this with, I don't know, maybe a shade similar to this, but shimmery and with a duochrome, I don't know what, green, gold, purple, pink, I don't care. Orange, I don't care. I just would have liked to have seen this palette lean a little bit more into the shimmers, because that's what I think is so special about this palette. You put the shimmer on and it just totally transforms a look, or, you know, creates a beautiful foundation for a really, really stunning look. So I would have liked them to lean a little bit more into the shimmers and not just the toppers. So I would have loved this palette to emphasize a little bit more multi-dimensional shimmers, grungy mid-tone colors, and the deep, dark, grungy colors, because I think that's what is the strongest element of these palettes, and that's what I'll reach for these palettes for. Enough rambling. I like the palette. If you like this color story, or you love the Kaleidos formula, or you love Angie and you're thinking about getting it, I don't think you'll be disappointed at all. I think it's a really well thought out palette. I think it's, you know, very, very flattering, and I think it's a great accompanying palette to sort of nudes. So if you're worried about not wanting to reach for this for full looks, you really don't have to. It complements beautifully with basic browns and basic other shades. So it's a really nice addition to someone's collection. All right, so that's it for my review. I just want to say a big congratulations to Angie for a really amazing and successful collaboration, and well done, Kaleidos, for approaching her to do this, because you made a good choice. And thank you to Kaleidos for sending me this in PR. I loved reviewing it. It's a great palette. I think it's probably one of my favorite, or the favorite palette you've released. So yeah, happy to have it. And hopefully everyone enjoyed this review. If you do want this palette, it is being restocked for the last time on the 17th of February at 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So hopefully you saw this in time to purchase it. I'll have a link in the description box to where you can buy it, and 45 bucks. I don't think you can go wrong. 15 shades, they all perform really nicely. And yeah, if you love color, or you just want a hint of color in your makeup, you're gonna like it. You're not gonna be disappointed. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.